my name is Leo Barber, and you are listening to the Vitals and Virtues podcast, where we focus on the pursuit of a virtuous life from the perspective of a nurse, me. Join me as I take in classical wisdom from saints, philosophers, and sacred scripture, distill it for practical application that you can take with you on your way into your shift. Be sure to keep an eye out for special editions where I get to interview healthcare professionals from various specialties to help us learn and grow to be the best people and providers we can be. Welcome back to Vitals and Virtues. I'm still your host, Leo Barber. Haven't found a new host for the show yet, trying to abdicate the throne. Just kidding, not really. But today we're going to be covering, actually this might be my favorite part of Introduction to the Devout Life, because we get into the nitty-gritty pieces of like the practical application, which I know I've probably said this a lot, that St. Francis de Sales is big into practical application, and he is. But I feel like here it really pops. This is kind of a longer chapter compared to some of the other ones that we've covered. But we're going into section 3. This is the first one, and it was on what type of virtues. Part 3 is all about, counsels concerning the practice of virtue. So what virtues are going to be the important ones? Which ones are we going to want to focus in on? And that might be different for different people in different areas in life. Whether you're struggling with certain vices or maybe not struggling with other vices. I think an important thing to remember whenever we get to a point where we're like, oh yeah, I don't struggle with that vice anymore. Remember, it's only by the grace of God that we don't struggle with those things. And I'm not saying this from a place of that's me. I have spent time, or I have at times thought that I was the master of some vice. No. That is where I was mistaken. And then I do the same dumb stuff, dumb, awful, sinful, stupid things that I used to do before. So anytime pride, that vicious, awful thing, shows up and tries to convince us that it's by our own doing that we have mastered some sinful inclinations or whatever, we've gone too far. But anyways, toss that aside for now, maybe, or keep it in your mind, whatever. Do with it what you want. You're the one listening here. But today we're covering I've already went over it. Sorry, my microphone seems to be giving me some troubles. It was super loud in my headphones. I'm trying to get that right. Hopefully that's helped it out. It's been a while since I've recorded, so bear with me. All right, without further delays, let's get into chapter 1 of section 3 of Introduction to the Devout Life, which is on which virtue. So how to select that which we should chiefly practice. The queen bee never takes wing without being surrounded by all of her subjects. Even so, love never enters the heart, but it is sure to bring all other virtues in its train, marshalling and employing them as a captain his soldiers. Yet nevertheless, love does not set them all to work suddenly or equally, at all times and everywhere. The righteous man is like a tree planted by the waterside, which will bring forth his fruit in due season. Inasmuch love, watering and refreshing the soul, causes it to bring forth good works, each in season as required. There's an old proverb to the effect that the sweetest music is unwelcome at a time of mourning, and certain persons have made a great mistake when seeking to cultivate some special virtue. They attempt to obtrude it on all occasions, like the ancient philosophers we read of, who are always laughing or weeping. Worse still, if they take upon themselves to censure those who do not make a continual study of their pet virtue. Pet virtue. St. Paul tells us to rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. And charity is patient, kind, liberal, prudent, and indulgent. At the same time, there are virtues of universal account which we must not only be called into occasion occasional action, but ought to spread their influence over everything. We do not very often come across opportunities for exercising strength, magnanimity, or magnificence, but gentleness, temperance, modesty, and humility are graces which ought to color everything we do. There may be virtues of a more exalted mold, but at all events, these are the most continually called for in daily life. Sugar is better than salt, but we use salt more generally and more often. Consequently, it is well to have a good and ready stock in hand of those general virtues of which we stand in so perpetual a need. In practicing any virtue, it is well to choose that which is most according to our duty, rather than most according to our taste. It was St. Paula's liking to practice bodily mortifications, with a view to the keener enjoyment of spiritual sweetness. But obedient to her superiors, she was a higher duty, and therefore St. Jerome acknowledged that she was wrong in practicing excessive abstinence contrary to the advice of her bishop. And the apostles, whose mission it was to preach the gospel and feed souls with the bread of life, judged well that it was not right for them to hinder this holy work in order to minister to the material wants of the poor, weighty as that work was also. Every calling stands in special need of some special virtue. Those required of a prelate, a prince, or a soldier are quite different. So are those beseeming a wife or a widow, and although all should possess every virtue, yet all are not called upon to exercise them equally. But each should cultivate chiefly those which are important to the manner of life to which he is called. Among such virtues as have no special adaptation to our own calling, choose the most excellent, not the most showy. A comet generally looks larger than the stars and fills the eye more, but all the while comets are not nearly so important as the stars, and only seem so large to us because they are nearer to us than stars, and are of a grosser kind. So there are certain virtues which touch is very sensibly and are very material, so to say, and therefore ordinary people give them the preference. Thus, the common run of men ordinarily value temporal almsgiving more than spiritual, and think more of fasting, exterior discipline, and bodily mortification than of meekness, cheerfulness, modesty, and other interior mortifications, which nevertheless are far better. Do you then, my daughter, choose the best virtues, not those which are most highly esteemed, but the most excellent, not the most visible, the truest, not the most conspicuous. It is well for everybody to select some special virtue at which to aim, not as neglecting any others, but as an object in pursuit to the mind. St. John, Bishop of Alexandria, saw a vision of a lovely maiden, brighter than the sun, in shining garments and wearing an olive crown, who said to him, "I'm the king's eldest daughter, and if thou wilt have me for thy friend, I will bring thee to see his face." Then he knew that it was pity for the poor which God thus commended him to him, and from that time he gave himself so heartily to practice it, that he is universally known as St. John the Almoner. Eulogius Alexandrinus desired to devote himself wholly to God, but he had not courage either to adapt the solitary life or to put himself under obedience, and therefore he took a miserable beggar, and seething in dirt and leprosy, to live with him. And to do this more thoroughly, he vowed to honor and serve him as a servant does his lord and master. After a while, both feeling greatly tempted to part company, they referred to the great Saint Anthony, who said, "Beware of separating, my sons, for you are both near your end. And if the angel find you not together, he will be in danger. You will be in danger of losing your crowns." St. Louis counted it a privilege to visit the hospitals where he used to tend the sick with his own royal hands. St. Francis loved poverty above all things and called her his lady love. St. Dominic gave himself up to preaching, whence his order takes its name. St. Gregory the Great specially delighted in receiving pilgrims after the manner of faithful Abraham, and like him entertained the King of glory under a pilgrim's garb. Tobit devoted himself to the charitable work of burying the dead. St. Elizabeth, albeit a mighty princess, loved above all things to humble herself. When St. Catherine of Genoa became a widow, she gave herself up to the work in hospital. Cassian relates how a certain devout maiden once besought St. Athanasius to help her in cultivating the grace of patience, and he gave her a poor widow as a companion, who was cross, irritable, and altogether intolerable, and whose perpetual fretfulness gave the pious lady abundant opportunity of practicing gentleness and patience. And so some of God's servants devote themselves to nursing the sick, helping the poor, teaching little children in the faith, reclaiming the fallen, building churches and adorning the altar, making peace among men. Therein they resemble embroideresses who work all manner of silks, gold and silver on various grounds, so producing beautiful flowers. Just so the pious souls who undertake some special devout practice use it as the ground of their spiritual embroidery and fame, all manner of other graces upon it, ordering their actions and affections better by means of this their chief thread, which runs through all. Upon thy right hand did stand the queen in a vesture of gold wrought with diverse colors. When we are beset by any particular vice, it is well, as far as possible, to make the opposite virtue our special aim, and turn everything to that account. So doing, we shall overcome our enemy, and meanwhile make progress in all virtue. Thus, if I am beset with pride or anger, I must above all strive to cultivate humility and gentleness, and I must turn all my religious exercises, prayer, sacraments, prudence, Hi, my name is Leo Barber, and you are listening to the Vitals and Virtues podcast, where we focus on the pursuit of a virtuous life from the perspective of a nurse, me. Join me as I take in classical wisdom from saints, philosophers, and sacred scripture, distill it for practical application that you can take with you on your way into your shift. Be sure to keep an eye out for special editions where I get to interview healthcare professionals from various specialties to help us learn and grow to be the best people and providers we can be. Other virtues, which will themselves be confirmed and strengthened as he uses them with that object. It was so with Job, who, while specially exercising the virtue of patience amid the numberless temptations which beset him, was confirmed in all manner of holiness and godly virtues. And St. Gregory Nazianzen says that sometimes a person is attained the height of goodness by one single act of virtue, performed with the greatest perfection, instancing Rahab as an example, who, having practiced the virtue of hospitality very excellently, reached a high point of glory. Of course, any such action must needs be performed with a very exceeding degree of fervor and charity. Boom. Okay, people, that was a lot. I probably should have taken a sip of water before I resumed recording, because I had to pause for a second and look up something that I wanted to point out. We'll start with the last thing first, about what he talks about Rahab as an example, having practiced the virtue of hospitality. In case you're unfamiliar with that story, zip back into the Bible and you will find the story of Rahab, where she was a Canaanite woman from Jericho, known for her faith and bravery, introduced in the book of Joshua as a prostitute who lived in Jericho and hid 2 Israelite spies who were sent to scout the city before Israel's attack. Rahab's actions, she was super hospitable to these people who, and she was saved, and so was her family because of her generosity and hospitality. And then, okay, so that's a cool kind of thing, because she was a harlot, she was a prostitute. So despite I'm reminded of the line from Pirates of the Caribbean where he's like, a single act of kindness doesn't wipe out a lifetime of wickedness. And Jack Sparrow says, well, it seems to be enough to condemn him, though. It's kind of not the same gist here, just some random thought. But anyhow, it's good to have these biblical references so easy at hand. And this is one of the things I like about St. Francis de Sales. Like, he references a lot of people, which means he was, like, this was back a long time ago, like 1600s. So he's doing all this, like, he must have been reading a lot. He references St. Gregory of Nazianzen. He references Augustine, St. Jerome, Cassian, St. Elizabeth, Abraham, St. Gregory the Great. Like, he's a lot of people that he is very familiar with. A lot of people that I think we should all, like, try to emulate. But something, like, let's tune into the nursing brain here, like certain pieces of virtue. This piece about people praying, trying to cultivate the grace of patience. This is hilarious. He just attaches some annoying old woman to this young devout maiden. Like, what? Just, yeah, you take care of this old crotchety lady, and this is how you're going to become patient. All right, so if you don't work in healthcare, you might not get this, but just for the healthcare worker, we take care of a lot of grouchy people who are ungrateful, rude, aggressive, like whatever the vice is, you name it. We have the opportunity to take care of these altogether intolerable people, as St. Francis mentions this woman was. All sorts of intolerable people. If we can take care of them in a kind, generous, patient way, like that's how you're going to cultivate some serious virtue. So anytime you have a grouchy person, kill them with kindness, cultivate that virtue of patience, and like loads of other virtues here. Not only are you going to cultivate patience, but generosity, kindness, meekness, strength under control there, where you could pick the bigger IV size or the larger catheter size, but you don't need to. Like, as much as we all want to do it sometimes, don't do it. That's kind of a jerk move. Be the better person. Then, all right. Sorry for the delay. I'm scrolling here up into more of this thing because there's a lot. Something similar. Now, if you've got kids, maybe you don't work in healthcare, they can also be very intolerable. Children can be super duper intolerable. I love my kids so much, but sometimes they're little turds. Anybody with kids knows this. Anybody with like nieces or nephews might pick up on this. Kids, they don't know any better. They're just kids. Children be children. So be patient. And this is something that I struggle with a lot. I was reading from St. Alphonsus Liguori's The 12 Steps to Holiness and Salvation from Tan. And I'm going to read a piece here because I thought it was super helpful. We must guard against using an angry tone which betrays an absence of self-control. This often does more harm than good. Many imagine that the best and only way to treat subordinates is by harsh deportment, to fill them with reverential awe and dread. But St. James the Apostle is of quite a different opinion. He says, if you have bitter zeal, glory not. This is not wisdom descending from above, but earthly, sensual, devilish. But the wisdom that is from above is peaceable, modest, full of mercy and good fruits. If you are obliged to speak in a sterner manner to impress the culprit with the gravity of his fault, at least conclude your remarks with some kind words to take the sting out of the reproof. Like the Good Samaritan, you must heal the wounds with oil and wine. When oil is mixed with other liquids, it always comes to the top. So too, says St. Francis de Sales, in all that you do, let meekness and gentleness predominate. If the person you wish to reprove is very much agitated, it is better to wait until he's grown calm. Otherwise, you only aggravate him the more. If a house is on fire, it is not proper thing to throw wood on it. So, all right, like I love it when these saints are referencing each other. It's great. But that was something that smacked me upside the head, especially with dealing with my children. They irk some nerves. They do dumb stuff, and then I react too quick. I don't sit still in a moment. Even like a 5-second breath. I need to do that better. And the saints are telling me I need to do that better. So patience and meekness, like if I got to whoop a butt, sometimes you got to whoop a butt. I'm not opposed to spanking, but there is a right way to do it. And I'm very often tempted to probably spank the wrong way. This probably sounds terrible as a podcast. Like, man, people are going to be reporting me to CPS. Actually, maybe I shouldn't post this. I'm going to, it's just going to happen. I think that's about it that I have for today. Definitely the things to look to where you are in life. I mean, I sort of preloaded this without having realized, because I generally do these as a cold read and give you my thoughts right away. Now, I have read this book before, and I've read chapters of it multiple times. I haven't completed it all the way through, but I generally give you my hot takes, and this is it. So, anywho, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to cut it here because this has actually been like almost, we're approaching 20-some minutes here. So, if you are interested, go over to Patreon. I've got a link in the description. Any support helps if you want to contribute and help keep the podcast going. I'm probably going to do it anyways. So, read these spiritual classics and have people over to talk to about, healthcare and what have you. But it does mean a lot to me to know that what I'm doing has value. I know it does, but I don't want to do it if it's just me getting the value out of it, I suppose. But maybe that's dumb too. I'm going to keep doing it, but if you want to support us, head over to Patreon and show some love there. That'd be cool. And I'll send you a thing. It's not a free gift like some other podcasters say. If you're supporting the show, I'm going to give you something in return for that, so it's not just my voice that you get back out of the deal. Whether it's, one of the books that we're reading, a handmade rosary by yours truly, or some other thing, a sticker that's got the logo on it, that sort of thing. It's kind of neat. I like this stuff. Maybe you'll like this stuff. And if you are like, hey, this is actually something that I would like to see on the show, or some sort of, perk for being a supporter, let me know in a comment somewhere, because that's super helpful for me to grow the channel and make things happen. At some point, I will have video. It's just not going to happen anytime soon, probably. Or maybe it will. I don't know. Let me know what you think in comments somewhere. Thanks, guys. St. Francis de Sales, pray for us.